I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo. Good afternoon, Columbus. Good evening, Bowling Green, and hello to everyone listening on the internet or on Pacific stations, wherever and whenever you may be. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my incredible co-host,
Rebecca Wood, I think.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Yes.
Together, Rebecca and I are about to regale you with a fantastic hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment, and we talk about it in the ways that it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and families, and goats and ponies and sea lions and chickens and camels and cows and sheep and horses and pigs and basically everyone.
And dugongs.
Everything. Because like it or not, the Pokemon?
No,
All of us are wrapped up together on this wonderful little planet called Earth.
Dugongs live in the Indian Ocean.
I see. Well, we've got a wonderful show for you today. We're just going to chat for the next 10 minutes or so. Then we'll have an interview with Ralph Bloemers. Ralph is an expert on wildfires and also on how to protect structures from wildfires. He's going to give us a report on the wildfires in Washington State this past week, specifically the ones that caused huge evacuations in Spokane. He is a returning guest. The last time we had him on was to talk about his film Elemental, Reimagining Wildfire. After that, we'll hear from our wonderful, wonderful patrons, to whom we are eternally grateful. And then Rebecca will give the show over to you. We'll be talking about dugongs.
And the Indian Ocean, where they live.
Yes. Indian Ocean. That's good. Interesting. Then it's ecological news from around the world, and that'll be our show. So you may have wondered what the theme was for all the animals except the dugong that we just listed. This is the week of the Wood County Fair, and all of those animals, including sea lions and camels, and a whole bunch more, can be found at the fairgrounds.
I want to see a sea lion.
Yeah, it's new this year. I don't remember last year. There's a whole water stage.
Oh my goodness.
If you go in the main gate, it's all the way off to the left.
Wow.
But the whole moral question of what we do with animals in captivity is a difficult one. Mm-hmm. Animal rights activists tell us that the animals on display at fairs are often very poorly treated. Our roving anonymous reporter spoke with a former Humane Society inspector who actually was directly responsible for inspecting the conditions for fair animals. She claimed that her inspection reports and recommendations for animal cruelty prosecutions were often ignored. There's no question that it's stressful for animals that evolved to roam freely about on a large wilderness landscape to be penned in tiny little cages or tied to posts for hours at a time. But on the other hand, children benefit from being exposed to the animals at the fair. The petting zoo is especially popular this year. I think it's fair to say that many animal rights activists were inspired to protect animals by experiences they may have had at a young age at a venue like a fair. And on a personal level, there's a picture of my mother as a teenager with a lion cub in her lap that's practically a family heirloom. It's difficult not to feel empathy when you look at an animal in the eye. It's clear to anyone who spends time about them that they feel the same things the same way that we do. And a long time ago, children were actually taught that animals couldn't feel pain. But of course, we've since discovered that animal brains, animal nervous systems, human brains and human nervous systems all operate in the same ways, using the same neurochemicals. For
I
the
don't know
most
how
part.
they think they'd know that. I mean, no one would know you feel pain if you didn't say ouch.
Yeah. That's why we had to run dangerous experiments, probably involving mice. They're the usual victim. Science has actually finally confirmed that animals even feel the same emotions we do. Anger, jealousy, love, boredom, those are all mapped in the electrochemical reactions in the brains of animals of many different species.
Especially jealousy, and they're not subtle about it.
Yeah. Cats and dogs when they see you petting something else. It's easy to imagine gorillas or animals that look vaguely humanoid to have their own emotions, but also creatures, species that are radically different from us experience emotions. Octopuses, for example, actually do display their emotional state on their skin with different colors when they're not using it to camouflage. Red for
They are their own mood ring.
red for anger, white for fear, and dark colors when they're upset. It couldn't be clearer that octopuses have feelings, or at least when someone cared enough to look at them. But the acknowledgement that animals do truly think and feel the way humans do hasn't yet been fully integrated into our culture. If it was actually widely accepted that animals had autonomy and personality and individuality, we'd be treating large-scale slaughterhouses like the atrocities they are. For right now, this whole matter is kind of lower on the scale in society's eyes than, say, day-to-day living. There are still some people who've fully embraced this idea, and most of them become vegans. But culture events like county fairs are still largely run the same way they were 100 years ago. There are important improvements, though. Humane Society inspectors do look at the condition of the fair animals, and the worst abuses of the past are largely gone. As recently as the first half of the 20th century, it wasn't uncommon for people to beat their pets and farm animals. If you hit a stubborn horse or a dog, that was considered just normal. But now, such treatment could result in prison time. While at the fair, our roving anonymous reporter observed a young camel that had been in the petting zoo. It was apparently feeling a little too energetic, rambunctious, and the handler had to take it away from the zoo into a little isolated area with some grass. He was trying to calm it down. There was some tugging on the harness, and the handler was talking to it a little harshly sometimes, but there was no real cruelty. In about 15 minutes, the camel was brought back into the petting zoo. You can find negative aspects about almost every animal found at events like county fairs. Some say petting zoos should be banned altogether because of the stress the animals go through being petted by hundreds or thousands of children every day. And there's many county-wide competitions about raising animals for slaughter or sale or shows. And while we have no doubt that those specially selected animals were given love and attention, the majority of farm animals across the country, and especially the world, are not. Sometimes people do try to improve the life of the animals, but more often than not, those improvements are rejected. A few years ago, there was a little controversy about the pony rides at the Wood County Fair. People said it was cruel to keep the ponies tied to their carousel all day long where they could only walk in circles. the Humane Society actually secured some pasture land so that the ponies could run around free when they weren't giving rides, but the owners chose to keep the ponies in their stalls. What do you, the listener, think? Where do you come down on this question? Is having animals at events like county fairs cruel or necessary, or is it actually positive for humans and animals? Let us know what you think. Send us a text to 419-973-5841, or you can send an email to joe@joedemare4greenfuture.org, or find us on social media. One thing that you do see at plenty of at county fairs are humans of all
sure
shapes
do.
and sizes and ages.
Prime people watching.
Oh yeah. Our roving reporter actually happened to run into Ohio State Senator Teresa Gavarone and Ohio State Senate Majority Leader Robert McCauley as they were buying porcelain sandwiches. With only a moment to interact with them, our reporter expressed the opinion that the Senate had made a big mistake with State Bill 219. That's the bill we've reported on that makes it much easier for fracking companies to frack in Ohio state parks. Senator McCauley responded by saying, quote, "I think it's a great opportunity to tap the resources to beautify our parks." Our response, Senator, no, it's going to wreck them.
Because they need apparently contaminated drinking water and earthquakes in national parks.
And
It'll make them more
sinkholes
beautiful.
and little oil slicks.
Yeah, sounds just peachy.
Yeah. And even the idea that the senator professed of using some of the money in order to improve the parks that they are destroying, that is a little circular, perhaps. Our reporter also encountered the Libertarian candidate for Ohio Governor Don Kissick. Mr. Kissick recently announced that the main focus of his campaign is going to be the opposition to data center construction. And that's interesting because at the heart of the libertarian philosophy is the idea that the government shouldn't be involved at all in private industry and regulating things like data centers or other aspects of life. The idea that they say they like, is that an unrestrained market will somehow always magically balance themselves out and miraculously pick the technologies and practices that are the best for the environment and the people and the economy. So having a libertarian candidate declare that there should be a complete moratorium on new data center builds is something of a contradiction to what libertarians have stood for historically. It's possible that the libertarian philosophy is evolving. It's also possible that as a politician, he's just seized on a popular issue and taken the most popular position.
They'll do that.
Yeah. We here on For a Green Future do intend on reaching out to all the governor candidates and giving them equal time on our show to talk about ecology and environmental issues. We actually did the same for the 2024 presidential election. We reached out to the Democrat, Republican, Green, and Libertarian candidates. Only the Libertarian got back to us and did agree to be interviewed. It was a very interesting one, actually, and you can find it on our YouTube or Podomatic podcast channels. The next election is months away, but right now there's a big crisis going on in the Pacific Northwest. Wildfires are raging, and they're happening in areas that traditionally have been extremely wet and cool. But months of hot, dry weather coupled with a record low snowpack has set the entire region up for flash fires. Our next guest, Ralph Bloemers, is an expert on fires. He's spent his life studying them, chasing them, and researching the ways in which we can live with fire as opposed to trying to always snuff it out. As you'll hear in our interview, fire is an unavoidable aspect of having any kind of natural landscape on a large scale. So instead of speculating on the fantasy that we can somehow prevent future forest fires by vacuuming the forest floor, we need to look at the reality of how to protect ourselves. That has been Ralph Bloemers' focus for the last 25 years. Let's go to that interview now.
Hi, hello, and welcome back to For a Green Future. Could you please share with us your name and who you're with?
Yes, my name is Ralph Bloemers. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I work with Fire Safe People TV, Fire Safe People Productions. I've made several documentary films, but I consider myself more of a curious fire nerd first and a filmmaker second. I've worked on fire issues for about 25 years on land management with fire scientists, with NASA and the DoD on their fire programs, and a lot of frontline firefighters, and of course, fire survivors who have lost everything in community-based fires, which we call conflagration.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I did want to ask, the last time you were on, it was to promote one of your films, Elemental. That actually did pretty well, right? You got a fair number of awards, and it, I think, was pretty widely shown.
Yeah, that film we started making short form videos in 17, and one thing led to another, and we weren't keeping up with fire season. We ended up in Paradise, California, where they lost 18,000 homes and buildings, and 85 people died, and really, really heavy impacts, humanitarian impacts on multiple fires throughout California, Oregon. That film has resonated with so many people, both on the fire line and firefighters who feel seen and heard, fire survivors who've lost everything. And there's multiple festivals, and it's been licensed worldwide, Canada, Europe, Korea, and it continues to get booked, get shown. People use it to just, create aha moments in their community that we don't have to be passive observers watching emergency response. And we don't need to be hiding in our basement, fearful. There's an understanding that we can gain and that there is agency that we have. And I think that's the most powerful thing of the film, why it resonates so deeply. Initially I just intended to make a film for Oregon to try to help us with moving past some past narratives to a better future and a better relationship with fire away from a broken one. So it's been super rewarding, and that's led to projects with NASA, and that's led to projects with the Department of Defense and their Army Burn program, and they do some of the most prescribed fire in the nation, very fire forward. And now two films about the LA fires, and that are feature films on PBS Weathered, and a new project which is Fire Safe People TV, which just features average folks, not weird preppers, just regular people doing the things to help firefighters before fire comes. So they're not a burden on response capability, which is, limited in these very fast fires. There isn't enough firefighters to have one per home. There's one per 40 homes in some of these fires, one per 200 homes. So, it's been a really rewarding journey for me, and it's turned me into a full-time filmmaker to have that film and the impact that film has had. And just, the greatest joy is really just this piece of firefighters, sharing private moments, private reflections because they feel comfortable sharing that with me, because I guess they feel like I get it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm very happy to see that progress after we had you on. So, but the reason we brought you on today, this week, is because of the massive fires that are happening up there in the Northwest right now. You've been posting on Facebook some pretty intense pictures of the conflagrations. What's going on up there? How bad is it? Do you have any firsthand experience with it? Are you seeing things? And there were a lot of people evacuated. Maybe you could touch on that. What's the situation?
Yeah, so I certainly watch the daily reports and the briefings, and to some extent the news. But because of my 25 years in this, I have folks that are on daily NASA briefings. They're running missions in the Pacific Northwest and in other Western states with their aircraft and remote sensing. And so then I know people that are fire behavior analysts, and I know where to look, right? So I'm usually looking out 2 to 3 days. So when there was a predicted wind event with an onshore cold front pushing a really strong wind, I knew what those sustained winds were going to look like. And I knew the fires that were vertical, right, into the crown burning trees, were all of a sudden going to become horizontal, and that the existing fires were going to, basically candlestick, and that any new ignitions east of a community would be very dangerous. I think within just a few minutes, maybe 5, 10 minutes, I got a text and a photo of the new ignitions outside of Spokane, and I knew immediately what it meant. I started looking at the road cameras and watching the mass evacuation. I looked where it was. I'm connected to the folks running the Watch Duty app, communicating with them a little bit, and then with fire services folks. So in the fire world, we call frontline firefighters, whether they're structural or wildland, the fire services. And I knew it was going to be bad. I knew what was going to happen, which is that the homes were unprepared. The homes were going to ignite and burn. And now what we've seen is, the homes ignited and burned, great, horrible suffering for the people in that community that lost their home. But, green trees all around because it was a horizontal fire. And it was largely in grasses and shrubs in the understory. And then, it's moving so fast, the vulnerabilities on the house, and the houses became the fuel to burn other houses. And it's very common over 4 decades of the study of conflagration being the word to describe when homes become the fuel and homes become dominoes to burn other homes, that you see green trees all around, right? It's not a forest question. It's not a vegetation question. It's the physics of embers landing proximate to a house, generating a flame, that flame coming in contact with the house, that house burning. And when that house burning, of course, is burning batteries, plastics, synthetic furniture, and it's burning at 2,500 degrees. And there's nothing they can do to put that out. I mean, they need so many firefighters per burning house and water that's just not going to happen. It's just got to burn itself out until the wind dies. And it's really, really hard to see that. And it's really, really hard to know that that's a possibility. And they initiated what's called a PDS, a potentially dangerous situation. So there's red flag warnings, meaning we got extreme fire weather. PDS is like next level red flag. So, what that means for people is like, don't start any new fires. But really what it means is, man, we got to prepare our homes and communities before fire comes. Most people still are in this mode of the fire is the problem, but really the proper definition is that the unadapted communities, unprepared communities in fire country are really the problem that we can solve. And that was what Elemental touched on and went into with Dr. Jack Cohen's work. But that's really where we're headed in the West. In California, you'll find communities where 60, 70% of the homes are prepared to resist ignition. I've worked in Spokane. I have friends in Spokane. They're moving in that direction. They're just not there yet. And I think the main thing, Joe, is that people are still, they operate under their lived experience, right? We didn't used to have this. I never had this as a kid. And I'd say, look, I get it. Me neither, right? I'm 54, but my lifespan is not a data set. We're dealing with systems on longer lifespans, and the switches right now are on. And I just call it the weather switches. So it's heat, aridity, and vapor pressure deficit, meaning super thirsty atmosphere. It's just suck the moisture out of anything. And then you switch on the wind, right? And then all you need is an ignition, either a new one or existing one. And it's off to the races, right? And it isn't a thing where you can then go deal with the shrubs and the vegetation, the grass and the trees, because there is so much of them. We live in an ocean of vegetation, right? And it grows back, and we don't know where fire is going to ignite. So we might go thin a patch of forest or burn a patch of grass, right? And we should think about doing that proximate to communities because it's maybe more strategic. But the odds that that particular intervention will burn before it grows back are basically like taking a cup and trying to make the ocean less wet. It's a very, 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 very low percentage chance. So the thing is, I'm super focused on what do we do to prevent humanitarian disasters in this context.
I was going to ask you about that some people claim that basically all we have to do is essentially vacuum the forest, get rid of all the understory and all the sticks and twigs laying around, and somehow we won't have these huge fires. But I think you're telling me that's just not true.
Well, I mean, if you have magical thinking and you want to deny physics and natural realities and you don't actually live on landscapes and don't actually manage land, it sounds good in theory, right?
Hmm.
But there's always going to be something to burn. Even if you masticated all the vegetation, you're going to have a bunch of bark mulch on the ground. And if you masticated that vegetation on a ridge top to create a fuel break, that would interrupt the ground component of the fire. It will not interrupt the three-dimensional component of the fire. In our communities, we like to have trees. And the thing is, we can have trees. We just need to not have them up in our eaves, right? The trees actually burn in like 60 seconds, don't generate enough radiant heat to ignite your structure, except if they're a juniper. Then they burn pretty hot, 800 degrees, and they can crack your windows. So we know what to do, but like, let's take Oregon, 60 million acres of land, 30 million acres of forest land, and only a percentage, a minority of the forest are these dry types where it's scientifically appropriate or possible to thin them, right?
Hmm.
And that they'll burn different. So at most, you're buying a chance that they'll burn different. And then within that, there's a chance that they'll burn before they grow back. So it's an extremely small lever, right? And here's the other thing, boreal forests and Canadian forests, those suckers burn at a 10 out of 10 when they burn. That's how they burn. Subalpine, Colorado Rockies, and Montana, those suckers burn at a 10 out of 10 when they burn. That's how they burn. Western Cascades, right behind me,
Hmm.
that's how they burn. The coastal rainforest here, the conditions have to line up, right? We have to get alignment and then they burn. But mostly they're too moist to burn, right? Most of the time. So what happened this year is, it's not a normal fire season, but it is a normal fire season if you look at 1910s, 20s, 30s, 40s when it was the Dust Bowl. But we're at a fire season running weeks ahead of schedule. We basically skipped from July to August. So what we had was a bunch of stupid human-caused ignitions around July 4th. You can guess
Oh.
why.
Mhm. Huh.
Okay. Then we had a lightning bust, meaning
Mhm.
dry weather with a ton of lightning strikes. And our remote sensing capabilities allows us to see fire when it's a little bit bigger. So we've got to do infrared flights to find those things all over the landscape. There were so many of them that we got to what's called PL5, basically no resources left for new fires, federally or at the state level, right? PL5, like we're maxed. Um, and we had record low snowpack this year and prolonged drying of the larger diameter material on the ground, or um, not the trees, because the trunks of the trees don't burn. Like, this is a high severity fire behind me.
Mhm.
You can see the trunks are all there. It's the needles that burn. But anyway, the fuels are more available, right? And the reason
Right.
people fixate so much on fuels or forests is because their mental model is it's a forest on fire from Bambi or Smokey Bear, and that's what burns them down, right? And it's a
Mm-hmm.
crown fire. It's a crown fire thing, right? But here's the thing, grass fires, the biggest fires in Oregon right now, the most landscape is burned is grass and shrub. It's like 75 grass and shrub and 25 forest. And I'll just put out there, like, yeah, it's sure land management, but 11 million of our 30 million acres of forest are privately owned. 7 million are industrially owned, largely by Wall Street investors. And what do? They clear cut it, they plant it densely, it grows back, it's all interconnected. And we had several fires in those landscapes, and they burn way hotter than a wilderness area, even if that wilderness area is unmanaged. So, it's these fires are resisting control. And we were much better at suppression from the 40s to the 80s because it was a cool, wet weather period, right? So it looked like suppression was effective, which then influenced society to say, well, why don't we just put these suckers out? But like, you look at the aircraft and they're not suppressing, they are mosquitoes spitting on a bonfire. They're dropping some water, some retardant, and they're providing aerial support for ground forces or ground firefighters in portions of the fire. So it's this really big scale thing that it's hard to imagine if you don't spend your time on
Mm-hmm.
these landscapes in fire. But like, we have forest land and an orchard, and just for me to keep the forest roads open is at least a week of sawyering every spring just to keep some roads open. And then just to keep them not overgrown and turning into, Raiders of the Lost Ark is is a lot of work. And I think that this notion that we somehow can control fire or manage fire out of the landscape through land management, it's just people that don't manage land. Or it's people that want to tell you that we can get paper and wood products and use that as a cover. And look, we all use and enjoy paper and wood products, and we should just say we want to cut some down so we have paper and wood products. But fire confounding that, I think, distracts society of what we need to do to prevent what happened in Spokane. And so I get pretty fierce about that because I've seen the human suffering. I have friends that have lost everything in fire. And I think, look, fine, let's log because we want to log. Let's prepare communities because we don't want them to burn down. But we're not going to get there by like monkeying around in this patch of this vast ocean of vegetation because we don't know whether that's even going to encounter fire. And we know what it mostly buys us is maybe less intense fire, but it also could increase wind speeds if you thin it out really heavy. So it's a mixed bag, and it's magical thinking, frankly. That's what it is.
All right. Well, hope you
Thanks,
get it
man.
for your
There's a fire. There's a fire 3 miles from our forest right now, raging.
Oh, really?
Grasshopper. It's on the eastern Mount Hood, and our orchard and forest land is right back up to the Mount Hood National Forest, just about 3 miles. And we're getting a wind event on Saturday. Luckily, it's a west wind, but with a plume dominated, like these things are generating pyrocumulonimbus clouds that are going to the upper atmosphere at 30,000 feet. And then late at night, sometimes they cool and collapse and blow out all directions. So they generate their own lightning. They're pretty intense, Two of my guys have been on Grasshopper. I went on Grasshopper on Sunday, talked to people on the fire line, and they're trying to build black line around that, but they build black line and dozer lines, and that only interrupts the ground component. If you get a fire that's generating and throwing embers, it's just going to go whoop whoop right over that. So that's what we're in right now. But for me, I have always loved and been fascinated with fire. So I go out there, and my experience is a little bit different. I'm not all fearful. I respect it. Don't get me wrong, but I have a lot more agency and understanding of it. So for me, I'm like up on deck on the storm, looking at the horizon line versus like fearful. It's just not how I'm built. I like to have all the info, and to me, it's empowering, even though these things are big. And if you're out there facing it, maybe scary, but to me, it's not really generally not scary. Choking on the smoke, I think, is not fun, but the reality is these are pulses of smoke, right? That you all are getting. They're not chronic sources. Right now, they feel a bit chronic. But it's interesting, if you look at firesmoke.ca, Joe, I just posted this on my thing. Look, there's a little bit of Canadian smoke, and all the smoke is coming from the US now. But anyway, that's a long ramble. Thanks for having me on. Send me the link when it's done, dude.
Believe it or not, that's all we have, about all we have time for. Anything you want to add really quick?
I mean, I just say the weather creates the wildfire, but the condition of your home determines whether it will burn. This year, the fires are behaving like it's late August, even though it's only early August, and we have to adapt just as quickly.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Ralph.
Well, that was our interview. It's always a little scary to hear about environmental disasters that you'd have no control over. But one of the things that we tried to focus on is that this fire is a natural way of life, and we do have to find ways to deal with it. What do you think? Let us know. I actually personally have a few friends in Oregon that were affected by the smoke this last year, and it is, last week, I should say, and it is, it is difficult to hear about them struggling and knowing you can't help at all, really.
Yeah.
What did you think? Do you have anyone affected by the fires or by any natural disaster? Let us know. You can send us a text at 419-973-5841. send us an email at joe@joedemare4agreenfuture.org or find us on social media. And now it's time for us to thank our patrons. Our patrons are wonderful people, intelligent, compassionate people that do think about their friends in dangerous places, and they have a love of nature and humankind, and they're just generally fantastic folks who understand the value of supporting a show like For a Green Future. And all they had to do to become patrons was to go to patreon.com. That's patreon.com. There they searched for a Green Future, and once our Patreon page popped up, they scrolled through looking at the different membership levels and picked one or created their own. And now every month, a little bit comes out of their accounts and comes over to us. And that's how we can afford to keep For a Green Future on the air. Thank you, thank you, thank you to our patrons. All right, Rebecca, the Indian Ocean, one of the vast expanses of the world.
Yeah, I mean, you don't hear that much about it. I
No.
personally did not know. I just assumed it was near India, which turned out to be correct.
Good, yes.
Yes. So,
The real India.
yeah, we're coming up on Indian Independence Day on the 15th from Great Britain, and, what's more Indian than the Indian Ocean? I don't know. Maybe something. I have no idea. But, yeah, it is, in fact, the third largest ocean in the world. I had no idea. And it's bordered by Africa, Asia, Australia, and either the Antarctic continent or the Southern Ocean, which the Antarctic continent is in, depending on opinion,
You
basically.
mean either? Oh, opinion.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
There's controversy.
Yeah, it's people geographers decide what standard they want to use, basically. But yeah, its marginal and regional seas would include the Andaman Sea, the Arabian Sea, the Laccadive Sea, which is near, Lakshadweep, the Lakshadweep region. So I guess that's where it gets its name, and the Bay of Bengal, which implies that the Bay of Bengal is so big it's actually a regional sea, at least, in the very least.
I guess. So
I didn't know nothing
that's
about that.
for the geographers to decide the standards.
I guess, yeah, they just kind of make a lot of stuff up, but there we go. Its major inflows would include the Zambezi, the Ganges, Brahmaputra, and the Indus, the Juba, and the Murray. I don't know where the Juba is. The Murray is in Australia, the Murray River. So I don't know if the Juba is there or someplace else. But anyway, those are some pretty impressive large rivers right there. Yeah, it keeps wanting to go up. Yep. So yeah, it's at its longest point, it's about 6,000 miles, 7,600 miles wide.
So it's height and width, 6,000 miles high, 7,600 miles wide.
Yeah, something like that. Average depth is 3,741. Maximum depth in the Sunda Trench, which I'd never heard of, was 7,290. Its shoreline is in excess of 41,000 miles long. So we're talking, and it's centrally located. It's near the Silk Road. It's where a lot of stuff went down. So it's played an important part in human history. It's also the youngest ocean because it was formed when Gondwana split up. So by youngest, we mean still pretty old in human terms.
It's all the same water.
Right.
Just
Yeah, but it has something like the coastlines don't have a very large continental shelf or something.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, its benefits. It's important ecologically is it has a number of biodiversity hotspots, include a lot of coral reefs, mangrove forest, and seagrass beds. The mangrove forest, I just saw a video this week saying that there are sea tigers in the mangrove forests.
Fish or sharks?
Yeah, they're tigers.
Oh, whoa.
They swim every day and they eat mostly fish. almost exclusively
That's
fish.
interesting.
I'd never heard of that.
I've heard of sea wolves. They do,
Yeah.
they do the same thing. Like
Yeah.
they live on islands and have adapted to.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is how you get cetaceans. Do you want cetaceans? Things just decide, oh, we can get more food in the ocean. Let's, that's how that works. It supports thousands of species of fish, marine mammals, and sea turtles. And it plays a pretty important part in climate regulation, it turns out, because it's a warm tropical ocean. So what it's doing is basically absorbing sunlight and sort of distributing the heat, around the planet. And it plays a pretty major role in taking in cold water from the poles and spreading it into the tropics, and also the tropical heat, which is going out to northern oceans. So there's that. Also, it acts as a massive carbon sink. It drives a lot of climate patterns, including monsoons, it turns out. And so it supports a lot of marine megafauna also, including the endangered turtles. It's like a big breeding and feeding area for all these things, which is basically what home is for animals, because they don't really need a place to keep their stuff mostly, Yeah. So also dugongs. I looked this up. Dugongs are basically manatees with a whale tail.
Ah, I see.
I was afraid it
No
was gonna,
horns.
Yeah, I was gonna. Manatees don't have horns.
Check.
No horns. No, they don't have horns. Thank heavens. That would be disconcerting. But yeah, they basically are manatees. They're very closely related to manatees. I looked it up and I was like, oh god, they're gonna turn out to be actually evolved from caterpillars or something crazy. But no, they're the same thing. They're the same thing. And let's see, they got dolphins and sharks and rays also, a lot of those things. So yeah, pretty important ecologically. Some threats ecologically would be, first of all, rapid ocean warming. Yep. It's trying real hard to act as our planetary heating and cooling system to keep everything sort of on an even keel and not have, the ocean boiling here and freezing over here or something crazy. But we've overloaded it. So it's in distress. It's having trouble. Apparently it warms faster than other global oceans because it's in the tropics. It also has wind-driven waves that tend to trap the warm water in the western part of it. And so there's extreme heat stress in the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal right now. There's coral reef degradation, overfishing, and the thing where, bycatch, where you get stuff you're not supposed to, industrial pollution, and also sea level rise is a problem because it's causing a lot of coastal erosion, bad things happening with the coast.
Yes.
Ocean silting up from all the dirt getting in there.
India is one of the most densely populated areas of the world, so
Yeah.
it'll cause some problems in the next decade or two.
And when the ocean silts up, you know what you have shark bites, increased probability of shark bites.
Probably.
Because they can't see. They mostly don't want to eat us. It's just,
If everything's dark.
Yeah,
I
so
guess.
sometimes they'll just take a bite and they'll be like, I might as well finish this, So, yeah, that's the Indian Ocean. I was happy to be able to learn some stuff about it.
Yeah, I learned some stuff too. Thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
Now it's time for Ecological News. Our first story marks a huge win in front of the Michigan Supreme Court. We're drawing on a story from the website Bridge Michigan, bridgemi.com, which ran July 31st, titled Michigan Supreme Court Vacates Key Line 5 Permit. Line 5 is a 73-year-old pipeline that carries oil from Superior, Wisconsin to Sarnia, Ontario, Canada. The pipeline rests on the bottom of Lake Michigan and crosses the Mackinac Straits. Back in 2018, Enbridge, the company that owns the pipeline, started seeking permissions to build a 4-mile-long tunnel under the straits. The tunnel will hold a new section of the pipeline, which would carry about 500,000 gallons of oil every day. The entire pipeline is 645 miles long. Enbridge says that the tunnel is necessary because the pipeline is in danger of rupturing. The one thing all parties in the controversy agree on is that a pipeline rupture rupture would be catastrophic for Lake Michigan and the surrounding environment. Enbridge's lawyers have said that building the tunnel was the best way to avoid a spill. The Michigan Public Service Commission agreed, and in 2023 issued the necessary permits for Enbridge to start building. But the project was challenged in court by 4 different Native American tribal groups: the Bay Mills Indian Community, the Little Traverse Bands of Odawa Indians, the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, and the Nottawasepi Huron Band of the Potawatomi all brought suit. The Michigan Supreme Court made a 6-1 decision that sends the matter back to the Public Service Commission and orders it to, quote, fully assess the replacement project's potential harms. The court said that commissioners did not consider all the environmental impacts that the project would have. One of the main failures of these studies Enbridge did, according to the courts, was it failed to consider if the project would harm the public's rights to the Great Lakes, and did not include the information about whether the current pipeline would continue to operate during the 5 years of construction that digging the tunnel would require. The court also said that alternatives to the tunnel project were not analyzed consistently. For example, the environmental studies only looked at the impact of an oil spill on the Mackinac Straits that could be caused by the pipeline, but when the study analyzed the potential environmental impacts of using trains to transport the oil instead of pipelines, it looked at the potential environmental impact along the entire 645-mile pipeline route. The court said the study should have also looked at the impact of spills along the entire pipeline route. The court said that the Michigan Public Service Commission had, in fact, violated the Michigan Environmental Protection Act when it approved the tunnel permit back in 2023. The tribes were represented by Earth Justice and the Native American Rights Fund, and now the entire application must go back to the Michigan Public Service Commission and essentially start from scratch. The delay throws the entire project into question and increases the likelihood that the entire pipeline will be shut down. So, good news from Michigan. Our next story comes to us from the website cleantechnica.com and was published on August 4th. The title is China Keeps Beating Renewable Targets and Missing Nuclear Ones. The main point of the story is that China keeps beating its targets for wind and solar energy development, sometimes beating the target years earlier than expected. On the other hand, nuclear capacity goals and targets are always being missed. Nuclear energy proponents always point at China as an example of the practicality of developing nuclear energy. They point to the fact that most of the new nuclear generation on the planet is happening in China. However, the authors of this story point out that even though new generation is coming online, it's still years late and billions of dollars over budget. In 2020, China set a goal of 210 gigawatts of installed wind capacity and instead installed 282 gigawatts that year. The solar target for that year was 110 gigawatts, but was actually installed was 253. And the next target was 1,200 gigawatts of combined wind and solar by 2030. China achieved that number in 2024, 6 years early. Just by the end of last year, China had a combined total of 1,842 gigawatts of wind and solar generation. And while new renewables were growing by leaps and bounds and surpassing expectations, nuclear consistently failed to meet its targets. In 2020, the same year that China set a goal of about 500 gigawatts of wind and solar, it set a target of 58 gigawatts for nuclear. Instead, nuclear only managed to bring about 50 gigawatts online. In 2025, the target was 70 gigawatts, and the actual amount installed was only 62. The authors point out that in China, none of the usual excuses that the pro-nuclear crowd gives for failed projects and missed nuclear targets in the US can be applied. There is no red tape in the form of environmental regulation or requirements for public participation in China. It's a dictatorship. The people have no say in the process. There's no lawsuits to hold things up. And there's also no lack of capital. The communist government is dumping as many billions of dollars into the nuclear projects as they are asked to. There's no problem with industrial capacity. China certainly has the capacity to machine or construct anything they want to. Instead, it suggests that nuclear power itself is inherently complicated and difficult, so much so that even with the full power of a communist dictatorship behind it, nuclear cannot meet its goals or deadlines or budgets. Our next story was published in ScienceDaily.com on August 1st. The title is Scientists Detect a Sharp Acceleration in Global Warming. One of the main themes for our show from the very beginning has been to point out that the globe is caught in a positive feedback loop. Global warming releases CO2, which causes more global warming, which releases more CO2, and it goes on and on. We've been saying this for years, and more scientific research is finally coming online that is proving it. A study authored by Grant Foster, which was published in the scientific journal Geophysical Research Letters, looked at the rate at which global temperatures have been increasing. They went all the way back to records taken in 1880, and they found that around 2015 there was a sharp increase in the rate of global warming. In other words, the accelerating temperature increase started accelerating even faster, and that's the sign of a positive feedback loop. The authors claim a statistical certainty of over 98%. We've talked about this before as well. The only way to stop a positive feedback loop is to cut off the input completely. In other words, we have to stop putting carbon into the air or we will cook ourselves, period. For our final story, we have another upbeat note. On August 4th, 2026, the website Yale Environment 360 published an article titled "The World Adds a Third Terawatt of Solar Power." In this past March, the threshold was reached and the world added its third terawatt of solar capacity. It took about 70 years from the creation of the first silicone solar cell in 1954 for the Earth to reach 1 terawatt of capacity. That happened in 2022. The second terawatt was just 2 years later, by 2024. And then in less than 2 years from that, the Earth passed 3 terawatt of installed solar power in 2026, March of 2026. It turns out that worldwide, poor countries are adapting solar at a much more rapid rate than wealthy countries. There's a couple of reasons for this. One is that they're being hit harder by the soaring fossil fuel prices. The homeowners in those countries can no longer afford gas or diesel to run generators, so they turn to solar to make up the difference. This is especially true in countries like Pakistan, Nigeria, and Cuba. Another factor is the lack of infrastructure to deliver energy that is generated by large power plants many miles away. If the grid is unreliable, generating your own power for your own use becomes much more practical. Battery installations are also surging. And also, much of this is because of the policies of China. Chinese solar panels account for more than half of the global solar installations. China continues to export cheap solar panels and cheap batteries, and developing nations are snapping them up. If installations continue at the current rate, there will be 9 terawatts of solar power by 2036. However, it's entirely possible the rate of installations will actually accelerate as other countries increase their own solar panel manufacturing capabilities. Well, that's our show for this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any comments about the show, you can give us a text at 419-973-5841, an email at joe@joedemare4agreenfuture.org, or you can find us on social media. We'll be back next week. This is Joe DeMare, signing off.
I don't want no oil a-spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!